You're listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Congressman Phil Roe from the great state of Tennessee is with us, and it's an absolute pleasure to have him back. Of course, he's as busy as everyone else should be, hopefully. Congressman, it's a pleasure. How are you?
Oh, great. Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm a little late, but we just left an event with Senator Corker, and we've been in a high school today, and National Prayer Day, of course, you know, it's today, and we attended that, and then we're heading to another city tonight, so it's been a busy day.
Oh,
well,
excellent.
Brett,
Amen.
Brett wants to know, welcome again, of course. Brett wants to know if you have a cure for a rambling brother.
No, not really, but I also have a problem when I leave hotel rooms. I was in, where was I? At a field hearing in over in North Carolina this week. We had a committee hearing over there, and I came out with my nose all stopped up, and after I got out for a few minutes, it cleared up, and I was okay.
Yeah, you know, if it's not the heating system, it's the lack of ventilation, or somebody smoked in a room and they weren't supposed to. It's always something when you're staying in a hotel. But, Congressman, on to more important things. One thing we wanted to discuss with you today was to get back in a little bit into sequestration. And the reason it's important to discuss is we've heard the White House blaming the economy right now, alluding to the fact that, well, this is all because of the cuts from sequestration. We've heard, the fact that we don't have enough, delays at the airports. It's sequestration. You can't visit the White House, sequestration. We had to cancel Fleet Week. It's sequestration. But for me, I think this president has to take some responsibility for the increase in taxation, some of his economic decisions, some of the regulation, there are so many other factors, and the truth of the matter is we're not creating jobs as a country because businesses aren't willing to bring on more people, and the economy isn't growing because business isn't sure of how things like Obamacare, well, we are, but maybe some businesses still aren't, how Obamacare is going to turn out.
No, I think you're correct. And look, I was I had a private medical practice. We had 100 doctors and providers in the practice, 450 employees, a fairly good-sized practice and business. I was a mayor of a city of 60,000 people with a $200 million budget. And a year and a half ago, in August of 2011, we voted to cut $2.1 billion over the next 10 years when the country's scheduled to spend $47 trillion in the next 10 years. So that didn't seem like too big of a lift for me. And we put the Joint Select Committee, the Budget Control Act, that's what it was called, put 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats to find out how these cuts are going to be made. And with a fallback being the so-called sequester, where just automatic cuts. Now, there are smarter things to do than automatic cuts. But I agree. I just heard Senator Corker say this a minute ago, and I agree with him. It's one of the better votes I've made in Congress. We finally actually cut something. And in doing this, Brett, this was not difficult. Last fall, before the election, we had a position come open in our office, and we thought, well, the sequester is going to affect us. We don't know exactly how much yet, so let me just keep that position open until I can find out how much money I have to run my congressional offices. That was a smart thing to do. That's what managers do. And if you can't cut this and manage, now there's some, and I agree on the military side, you got to look hard at that, and I think you got to look at how the cuts are being made. Certainly, managers ought to be allowed to move their money around, and this handcuffs them a little bit. But we can do that, but the cuts need to be made. And this nonsense about not opening up the White House, it's utter foolishness. I mean, it truly is. It's a very minimal expense. You could find that. You could find that in the amount of money to keep the White House tours open in the couch at the White House or the change that fell out.
Well, that's a good one. I just want to. There's another article I was looking at, and it relates to both of these, situations. It's a story about part-timers because of Obamacare. A lot of companies are rolling back the hours, and in this case, 1,600 part-time employees are going to see fewer than 27 hours so they don't have to provide their health care. There's in the storyline here, certain colleges are having professors be part-time so they don't have to provide their health care pay for the health care premiums. And then at UC Berkeley, they did a report, and they estimate 2.3 million workers nationwide are in risk of losing hours. And to me, when you're arguing that sequester is harming the economy, to me, when people are cutting back people's hours to save on health care costs, that's hurting the economy.
Oh, listen, Brad, you nailed it. I was over this hearing that I had. I'm the chairman of the subcommittee of Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions. So, and just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, this Tuesday, we had a field hearing at a community college, and we had 8 different people speak: business people, medium-sized businesses, small businesses, and the community college. And the community college HR director sat right there in front of that hearing, and at Concord, North Carolina, and also Congressman Hudson was there. That's his district that we held it in. That's exactly what they said. What the IRS's rule is for these adjunct faculty members that community colleges use to bolster their full-time faculty. And some of these people want to teach a bunch of subjects one semester, and another semester they don't want to teach as much. The IRS's rule, for every 1 hour you spend in the classroom, they classify 3 more hours as preparation. So that's work. And by doing that, an adjunct professor can't teach a full 3 courses, or they exceed the 30 hours. And I said this, the only place in the world I know of where 30 hours a week is considered full-time work is France. And I don't think we want to be like France. And this is one small business after another said, look, one was a small business that they provided all, this is a self-insured business, they provided all of the preventive care, colonoscopies, breast screening exams, mammograms were done for free for their employees or their partners, they call them in this business. And guess what? The reward they get for doing the right thing. For each person they cover, each family member and each employee they cover, they have to pay $63 into a fund to indemnify insurance companies so that they will take a risk when the exchanges open up. So this self-insured business is going to cost them thousands of dollars. The owner of that business sat there and said, I also, because I'm a subchapter S and everything is passed through me as income, it's taxed as regular income, I now have a 3.8% increase in my investment taxes, a 0.9% increase in my Medicare taxes. He said, this prevents me from hiring people. I heard this, Brett, just Tuesday, 2 days ago.
You know, this is such a profound example of why Brett and I are huge. In fact, I think one of the first times we interviewed you, we made the comment that Congress should allow no bill larger than the Constitution itself, because when you uncover all these wonderful things you always disclose on our show, you realize how many of these things are written in the bill that they're written to line somebody's pockets, but it's not in the interest of the greater good, and it certainly is not doing what the bill is supposed to do, which is provide either A, affordable, or B, health care, right?
Right. Well, the president, I called him out on it. The first year he was in Durham when he made this speech about anybody who wants to go over this bill line by line, I'll be willing to do it. It looks like he should have taken me up on that, and it would have saved him a lot of grief and the American people a lot of grief and cost. I just left some hospital administrators today. Let me give you an example of a case that, without identifying who it is, this is a person of Indian origin who wrecked a truck in my district, was taken to one of the hospitals. He's here. We don't know whether he's legally here or illegally here. We don't know. His company is in New Jersey with a post office box that they send stuff to in Texas, so nobody knows anything about this guy. They're going to spend about $300,000 or $400,000 on this illegal person who's here. And the hospital, the doctors, the supply company, nobody will get paid anything. That's where illegal immigration is hurting. One of the ways illegal immigration is hurting us. We have, and not legal immigration, illegal immigration. And the health care bill, guys, is one of the most, it's amazing to me to hear the president say that, well, this is only going to affect about 10 or 15% of the people. No. What we did to help cover 15 or increase coverage for 15% of the people who didn't have it was affect 100% of the people, because I got a news flash from Mr. Obama. The individual mandate covers everybody out there in this country if you don't have health insurance provided for you by your business right now. Everybody.
Well, exactly, and it's a huge disincentive. To the point you were making before, I just hopefully this will at least make you feel slightly better. I'm actually doing some extensive business in France with our social media company, and I've been over there and working with some brilliant entrepreneurs. And one of the things I've enjoyed, including some staffers I've spoken with at the embassy, there's an awful lot of folks there who are extraordinarily frustrated with the socialist government, but there's sort of two classes. There's the class that Obama would identify with, right? The ones who want to get in line and make a very easy life for themselves, not realizing they're doing a greater harm. But there's an incredible amount of pent-up entrepreneurial spirit who is so frustrated by the difficulty of hiring and firing somebody, the restrictions on hours, the invasiveness, the excessive government bureaucracy and costs. So there is the desire, it's just they're stuck, and it should be a wake up call to America that when you build a society that becomes this socialist, it's not easy to break free from that, even if 35, 40, 50% of your population would like to. It's very easy to break those chains.
Then look at young. I'll tell you a country that I feel really bad for the young people is Spain. I mean, you have bright young people in that country, well educated, that cannot find a job doing anything. How would you like to? And that's what I'm afraid we'll do in our country if we don't reduce the burden. And Brad, I don't know what to do with this bill right now. People said, well, Phil, can you piecemeal it and fix it? I said, I don't think you can. And I told the hospital administrator I was talking about today, I said, look, at the end of the day, whatever happens, whatever we bring in from Washington, you still have your mission, which is to take care of sick people here in Northeast Tennessee. And you have to. When we get ill, when something happens to us, we want to go to the hospital, and we want it to work for us, and we want to have doctors and nurses to care for us there. That's what we expect. I think that's fairly reasonable to expect. So I don't know what the end result is going to be with this. Here's another frustration I have. I can't even tell. I spent 2 hours this past week, 2 hours and 15 minutes at a Veterans Affairs meeting, talking with Dr. Petzel, who's the Chief Medical Officer, with the IRS and the Treasury Department there. They have representatives all there, how the Affordable Care Act was going to affect veterans. After 2 hours and 15 minutes, I couldn't explain that to a veteran. I can't even tell my own staff who work for me in Washington and here in the district what their insurance is going to cost them and how they're going to get it come October 1. That's how bad this is.
Well, speaking of veterans, before you become a veteran, you actually have to put your life and limb online for this great nation. And you had made some commentary just a couple of days ago that you didn't feel we should be getting involved militarily in Syria. And I wanted to ask, not necessarily just your personal opinion, but I wanted to get, without giving any names, what you think the underlying temperature is on Capitol Hill, because I agreed wholeheartedly with your commentary, which I would summarize as saying there's so much chaos and so much risk and so many enemies are enemies of my friends, and I only have one friend in the region, that why play a game that we can't win? But what's the temperature in Capitol Hill here, and then what do we do?
I don't sense any enthusiasm at all on either side of the aisle of getting involved. And look, I mean, from a humanitarian standpoint, 100,000 people die. I've got that. That is terrible. I understand that as a human being. I understand how awful that is. However, when you look at the ruling party, which represents with President Assad, dictator Assad, about 13% of the people, they brutalize the other people to stay in power. You got the Shias and the Sunnis, and in there you've got Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, all this chemistry. That how in the world would we ever go in and do anything except get both eyes blackened, lose a lot of good people, and have whoever comes out on top despise us? I don't see it. And I think right now we need to be very cautious. And I think the other thing we need to explain to whichever side comes out on top is that there's a country of Israel here, and you must understand we do support them, and we are going to support them militarily so that conflict does not spill over. And I've been right on the border of Syria there, on the Israeli side and Lebanon, and that war doesn't spill over into Israel and to Lebanon.
No, it's a good point. And one concern I have is I don't want us sending weapons into Syria, because I think that not just us, but a multitude of countries from China to Korea to Russia and us, we've been putting too many weapons around the world, and they always end up in the wrong hands. And then, we see what the world's like today. I think that we have to let countries deal with their own issues, and if the UN wants to step in and do it, that's fine. How about use Middle Eastern troops to be peacekeepers for a change, and not Americans with blue helmets? And I agree with you 100%. If they move into Israel and we need to provide aid, that's one thing. But for us to become involved in a conflict where Americans can't win, I don't mean that we can't win the conflict, but we can't win because the world will be mad for us being involved in anything no matter what. So we may as well not lose more American blood for something, like I said. Actually, you pointed out that there's so many different tribal factions here that one or more are going to hate us no matter what.
Well, my guess is the 5 or 6 that I named will all hate us at the end of the day. I mean, look at our experience over there now, and we've left a lot of treasure in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've visited Afghanistan twice and hope to make another trip in the very near future while we have troops still there. And we probably will have some number of troops, UN troops, that end up staying in Afghanistan. But my goodness, we've been there 12 years. And I've thought about Syria a lot, and no one is more, supportive of our military and veterans than I am. But I don't want to sacrifice. I was at a North Green High School today speaking to a junior and senior government classes at that small high school, and 5 of those young boys are going into the military. And I looked at those kids, and I'm thinking, those kids I need to look at them and think, they're all going into basic training this summer. And I'm thinking they're looking at leaders like me to make rational decisions about how they're deployed around the world and putting their life on the line. And I, in good conscience, being a Vietnam-era veteran, we need to stay out of Syria.
I was just going to mention, don't sell yourself short. You're a veteran yourself.
Somebody made some bad decisions back in the 60s, and we need to think this through, and we certainly have had a lot of experience. I think we understand. I think our State Department, our CIA, our intelligence people, our military people, certainly a general like Petraeus that spent 10 years over there, I think they understand that as well as Americans ever have. And I can't imagine that our military would be pushing to get involved in that conflict.
Yeah, I would hope not.
Basically a civil war.
Yeah, yes. I could point out 2 other things that we need to be concerned about, North Korea and Iran. I mean, those are the 2 immediate concerns that we have. And also, we have China that's becoming ever more, what would the term be? They're really pushing it in the South China Sea with the Senkakus Islands and other areas. And you could see the reports coming out of China. They're looking to test other Asian countries and the United States, and they've said so in their own language.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be a shock to anybody. And as you guys know, I was stationed just south of the DMZ in Korea years ago, and had the privilege of visiting back where I was stationed just last year again, and sort of get my feet on the ground there and view what's going on. That is a very dangerous place because we have so little information about the leadership in North Korea. We really don't know who is in charge of that. So they have nuclear weapons, and I certainly think I was asked this in 2006 when I ran for Congress the first time, and I lost, I might add. But the first question I got at a debate was, do you think Iran should have a nuclear weapon? And the answer is absolutely not. Shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. And I thought that then 7 years ago, and I still believe it today. The Middle East will be totally destabilized if we allow that to happen.
Oh, that's a fantastic point, because the second Iran has one, Saudi Arabia will actually obtain one, most likely from Pakistan, because I've heard that that's an agreement that's already in place.
Well, that'd be the easiest way to do it. You wouldn't have to have centrifuges or enrich any uranium or anything. You just buy one. And by the way, Pakistan has between 50 and 100 nuclear weapons. It's fairly well known, and who knows what the command and control there is in that country. So that is a very dangerous part of the world. I've had the chance to be there on several occasions, and it is complicated, but I really believe that our military now understands that part of the world better than it ever has.
I would agree with you on that. And then one other scary factor before we let you go, we have a president who's seeking denuclearization on our part. And I didn't get to read the full article, but we know this is happening. The Russians are building new nuclear weapons. We're getting rid of some of ours. And to me, you see all these countries that are increasing their numbers. They're all our enemy or all potentially our enemy. And we might not have as many as them combined. And to me, that's a serious problem.
Well, it is. And I looked at everybody laughed at President Reagan back in the 80s when he talked about Star Wars and and being able to intercept a missile. Aren't you glad he did it? And right now you can intercept an intercontinental ballistic missile, and we have the technology to do that. And so I feel a lot better about what a decision was made 25 years ago. What you worry about, and what you guys just pointed out, what about a decision made today that in 2030 or 35 we're looking back 25 years later and saying, wow, we're weakened now. We can't deal with these people. And if I'm the president of the United States, and I wish nuclear weapons didn't exist. Okay, they're horrific weapons. I wish they didn't exist, but they do. The reality is that they do. If I'm the commander-in-chief, I want the biggest stick in the bag.
And you want the stick that has the highest level of readiness. Much of our arsenal, that's the point Brett was making, is already quite old. And
right.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem. To me, and this is almost a request to you and all the congressmen, is this sense of dealing with highly charged political issues that generally are very unstrategic and very myopic, but they make a lot of news time. These unsexy things like missile defense are very long tail issues, but as you point out, those are the decisions we make today that will decide how safe the world our children and grandchildren live in, and they need to become a higher priority item that gets more voice and more attention than some of these things that are nothing but kind of social news fodder.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the president's chief objective in the Constitution of this country is to protect this nation. He's the one who is ultimately responsible. That is in there. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. And obviously, the bigger and stronger we are, the safer the world is. We've proven that. If we're weak, you pointed out very clearly, the Chinese will probe and test us. And if we're strong, they'll have less inclination to do that, and the world will be a safer place. And quite frankly, I think it's time that the UK and that Germany and France and so forth kick in a little more for their own protection in NATO. We found out during the Libyan operation. I mean, Libya has 6.5 million people, same as the number of people live in Tennessee, and they couldn't carry out an operation without our support. That's kind of scary, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, Congressman, we want to thank you for joining us. And by the way, next time you're in North Carolina, give John a buzz. He lives right in Charlotte. Oh,
wow, well, good. Well, we will do that. We had a great time. I ate at Sonny's Barbecue while I was there, and ate the dry ribs. They were great.
Good stuff at Sonny's. Excellent food.
Excellent food. He was one of the people, the founder, that was one of the people that testified at our committee hearing. So it was good to hear from a small businessman that owned 5 restaurants in North Carolina and the things that the problems he was having with the Affordable Care Act.
Good stuff. Well, Congressman, again, thank you for joining us. You have yourself a wonderful weekend, and good luck when you get back into D.C.
Thanks. Look forward to being on the show again soon.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
And, of course, you can find the Congressman at roe.house.gov.